The laughing before the storm. November 11th, 1944, 22,000 feet above the Philippine Sea, northwest of Leyte, late morning. The air inside the B-24 Liberator is thin, loud, and smells faintly of oil, cordite, and hot metal. 4 Pratt & Whitney engines hammer in uneven rhythm, vibrating the aluminum skin until it feels alive beneath gloved hands. Outside, the Pacific stretches endlessly below deep blue, broken only by scattered cloud shadows drifting like ghosts across the water. Staff Sergeant Eddie Kessler, waist gunner, U.S. Army Air Forces, braces himself against the fuselage as turbulence rattles the aircraft. He's 23 years old, lean, sharp-eyed, and already looks older than his age. His flak vest bites into his shoulders as he leans toward his .50 caliber Browning machine gun, checking the feed tray one last time. The ammunition belt running into his gun doesn't look right. The rounds aren't uniform. Instead of the standard repeating pattern, armor-piercing, tracer, it's a strange mix. Tracer, incendiary, armor-piercing, then tracer again, no neat rhythm, no regulation spacing. Earlier, in the sweltering heat of the hard-packed coral airstrip, someone had laughed when they saw it. "You trying to invent a new war, Eddie?" one of the other gunners had joked, wiping sweat from his neck. Even the flight engineer had frowned. That's not how the manuals say to load it. Kessler hadn't argued. He never did. He just kept feeding rounds into the belt with methodical patience, fingers blackened with oil, mind running through memories he couldn't shake, of tracers vanishing into empty sky, of Japanese fighters slipping through defensive fire untouched, of knowing he was shooting, but never knowing where his rounds were truly going. He'd learned the hard way over Rabaul months earlier. Tracers helped aim, but they also warned the enemy. Armor-piercing punched through, but without feedback, you never knew if you were close or wasting ammunition. Incendiary rounds terrified pilots, but only if they hit. So Kessler started experimenting, quietly, one belt at a time. Now the Liberator drones onward, part of a small formation heading toward enemy-held shipping lanes. The mission is supposed to be routine, long-range patrol, armed reconnaissance, watch for convoys moving reinforcements between islands. Routine doesn't exist anymore. Up front, Captain Robert Hale, the aircraft commander, scans the horizon through the cockpit glass. His knuckles are white on the yoke. He's flown enough missions to recognize the feeling, the unnatural stillness before something breaks. Then the intercom crackles. Bogies 2 o'clock high, fast. Kessler snaps his head around, pressing his face close to the plexiglass. At first, he sees nothing, just sky. Then the dots appear. Tiny, dark, moving too fast to be birds. Japanese fighters. Zeros, Oscars, hard to tell at this distance, but there are a lot of them. Too many. Multiple contacts, the top turret gunner confirms, counts climbing. They come out of the sun, just like always, a textbook ambush. Light, agile fighters diving toward the lumbering bomber with terrifying speed. Kessler's mouth goes dry. He flips the charging handle on his Browning, the metal clacking loud even over the engines. The belt feeds smoothly, the mixed rounds slide into place. Behind him, the tail gunner swears softly. "They're confident today," someone mutters over the intercom. The first pass comes hard. A Zero streaks in from above and behind, tracers ripping past the fuselage. The Liberator shudders as rounds strike aluminum skin. Somewhere forward, something bangs loose. "Contacts closing," Hale shouts. "All gunners engage." Kessler swings his gun outward, leading the target just like he's been trained. But this time, when he squeezes the trigger, the sky answers back differently. A tracer burns out of the barrel, bright, unmistakable. The Zero reacts instantly, jinking away from the glowing line. Then, a split second later, an incendiary round reaches the same space. It hits her. There's a flash, not an explosion, just a sudden bloom of flame along the fighter's wing root. The Zero snaps sideways, trailing smoke, diving steeply toward the sea. Kessler doesn't cheer, he doesn't even blink. He adjusts his aim. Another fighter comes in, closer this time, confident, aggressive. Kessler fires again, short, disciplined bursts. Tracer to mark the path. Armor-piercing punches through the fuselage. Incendiary follows. The Japanese fighter jerks violently. "Hit, he's hit," someone yells. The waist gunner on the opposite side starts shouting too. They're breaking, one's on fire. Mori fighters pour in, but something has changed. They hesitate. The tracers no longer just warn them, they lie. The fighters dodge the visible rounds, only to fly directly into the invisible killers following behind. Kessler feels it before anyone says it aloud. They're not just shooting anymore. They're controlling the fight. And the laughter from the ground feels very far away now. The sky around the B-24 seems to constrict, compressing the 2-ton bomber into a cage of tracer lines, smoke trails, and frantic movement. Japanese fighters dart in, weaving from port to starboard, engines screaming, wings glinting in the harsh morning sun. The Liberator shudders as rounds impact the fuselage, pinging off rivets, tearing at panel seams, and sending up clouds of aluminum dust. The crew doesn't flinch. Every eye is locked, every hand steady. Kessler, waist gunner, continues his methodical rhythm. Tracer, armor-piercing, incendiary. Tracer, armor-piercing, incendiary. The unusual sequence isn't just experimental anymore, it's proving devastatingly effective. Fighters hit by the armor-piercing rounds wobble violently, then the incendiary ignites parts of their fuselage. By the time the next tracers scream past, the remaining pilots hesitate, confused, trying to anticipate the invisible threat they cannot see. Up front, Captain Hale cranes his head, observing the chaos. He sees one fighter break formation, smoke trailing, corkscrewing toward the water. Another suddenly spins out, leaving a cloud of fire behind. His voice is calm, precise over the intercom. "Stay focused, lead through the tracers, fire in controlled bursts, don't waste ammo." The bombardier, Lieutenant Joseph Joe Anders, checks his sights briefly, glancing at the fuel gauges, and shakes his head at the pandemonium. They're supposed to be aiming at ships below, dropping bombs. Yet, above them, an aerial battle has erupted, and the B-24 is holding its own in a fight it shouldn't survive. The tail gunner, Sergeant Tommy O'Neill, lets loose a rapid series of short bursts. Each round is carefully aimed, each tracer marking the path, each armor-piercing shell threatening the structural integrity of any enemy aircraft bold enough to press closer. He yells, "That's three down." The B-24 continues its slow, lumbering path, engines straining, but unbroken. Two fighters, daring and aggressive, dive in simultaneously from the sun. Kessler tracks the first with his mixed ammo, calculating distances, judging lead, and compensating for wind drift. The incendiary shell flames the upper wing of the attacker. Smoke spirals as it struggles to maintain level. His next burst, armor-piercing, punches through the fuselage near the cockpit. The Zero spirals, vanishing into the Pacific below. The second fighter is no less bold. It's closing on the left boom, aiming at the wing to disable it before the tail guns can respond. Kessler rotates, presses the sequence again. Tracer, armor-piercing, incendiary. Each round is deliberate. His trigger finger moves with the familiarity of years at the range, yet under pressure that would paralyze most men. A sharp flash. The enemy aircraft bursts into flame, tumbling out of the sky. The crew doesn't cheer, but a collective exhale of relief passes through the cabin. From the cockpit, Hale's voice cuts through the static, measured but intense. Adjust course slightly left. Tail coverage maintain 360 degrees, no gaps. The B-24 wobbles as another fighter attempts a high-angle pass. The gunner's rounds meet the attacker mid-dive, igniting the wing route. Smoke trails back, obscuring the bomber momentarily, but the team has learned the rhythm of survival. Coordination, training, and the genius of a single gunner's unconventional belt make the impossible seem routine. Minutes stretch like hours. The Japanese pilots, disoriented by unpredictable patterns, begin hesitating. They expect a linear response, tracers that follow sequence, gunners who fire predictably, but Kessler's mix creates uncertainty. Incendiary rounds, armor-piercing, and tracers overlap in chaotic sequences, making aim correction for the enemy nearly impossible. For each aggressor destroyed, another tries, only to falter. Fear starts to set in, a rare emotion for seasoned Imperial pilots. A sudden jolt shakes the bomber. Shrapnel pierces the port wing, igniting a small panel of aluminum. Smoke coils into the cabin. Hale yells for the crew to identify damage. Kessler doesn't pause, he keeps firing. The sequence becomes instinct, muscle memory overcoming fatigue, fear, and deafening engine noise. The Liberator is a fortress of steel and determination. Each burst from his gun tells the attackers that the odds have reversed. By the time the last of the swarm disengages, at least 7 enemy fighters lie smoking or in flames across the horizon. The B-24 itself has taken hits, dents, pierced panels, shattered glass, but the crew remains intact. Kessler leans back slightly, wiping sweat from his eyes beneath the oxygen mask. For a brief moment, the laughter from the airstrip and the disbelief from earlier missions fade into memory. They weren't laughing now. They weren't mocking. They were surviving. And not just surviving, they had proven that a single mind, a single sequence of ammo, could turn chaos into control. One stupid trick had become a deadly weapon, shaping the outcome of this engagement and ensuring the Liberator's safe passage back to base. The flight engineer calls over the intercom, voice strained but alive with disbelief. All systems stable barely, but you've done it, Kessler, the gunners all accounted for. Hale nods, eyes scanning the horizon, and for a rare instant allows himself a shadow of a smile. Survival was never about luck. It had been patience, discipline, and ingenuity. The return flight is quieter, but not calm. The B-24 Liberator limps westward, engines droning unevenly, the Pacific spread endlessly beneath them like a dull sheet of steel. Smoke still seeps from a damaged panel near the wing root, and the smell of burnt cordite clings to every corner of the aircraft. No one relaxes, not yet. Captain Hale keeps the bomber steady, hands light on the controls. He knows better than to assume the danger has passed. Japanese fighters have a habit of returning when crews least expect it. Behind him, Staff Sergeant Will Kessler remains at his gun. He hasn't unclenched his jaw since the fighting ended. His ammunition belt is nearly gone now, empty links rattling uselessly beside the feed tray. The mixed sequence that drew laughter back on the airstrip has been burned into the sky, round by round, fighter by fighter. He replays it in his mind. The hesitation he saw in the enemy pilots, the way tracers forced corrections, the way armor-piercing rounds punched through cockpits, the way incendiaries finished the job. It wasn't magic. It was understanding. Understanding how human eyes follow light. Understanding how pilots react under stress. Understanding that fear can be engineered. When the coastline finally appears on the horizon, the relief is physical. Shoulders sag, breathing deepens. The Liberator begins its descent toward the coral runway carved out of jungle and dust. Ground crews spot the bomber immediately. They see the damage before the aircraft even lines up. Ragged holes in the fuselage, blister glass cracked, streaks of oil and smoke marking where Japanese rounds came close to ending everything. The landing is rough. The B-24 slams onto the strip harder than planned, tires shrieking, suspension protesting. The bomber shudders, rolls, and finally slows to a stop amid a cloud of coral dust. Engines shut down one by one. Silence crashes in. For a moment, no one moves. Then the hatches open. Crewmen climb down stiffly, boots hitting the ground like they're unsure it's real. Ground personnel rush in, staring openly at the damage, counting holes, shaking their heads in disbelief. Jesus, someone mutters, how many came at you? Captain Hale answers quietly, enough. Intelligence officers arrive quickly, clipboards, cameras, questions fired rapid and sharp. The crew is ushered into a makeshift debrief hut where the heat is suffocating and the air smells of sweat and tobacco. The kill claims come out slowly. 7 confirmed, possibly more damaged. No losses. Eyebrows rise. Then someone asks the question that has already spread through the ground crews. What the hell were you feeding your guns? All eyes turn to Kessler. He hesitates, then explains calmly, simply, tracer every third round, armor piercing behind it, incendiary after, not regulation, not approved, just something he'd tested in his head after watching fighters correct aim off tracers and slip past fire. At first, the room is silent. Then an intelligence officer leans forward. Say that again. Kessler does. This time, no one laughs. In the days that follow, the story spreads, first across the squadron, then to others flying similar routes. Some crews dismiss it, others try it quietly. A few report similar results: better tracking, faster corrections, enemy fighters breaking off sooner. No official manual is rewritten. But something changes. Gunners begin thinking differently. About patterns, about psychology, about the man in the other cockpit. Weeks later, Kessler is standing on the flight line when a new crew walks past. One of the gunners gives him a nod, not casual, not friendly. Respect. Another asks quietly, "Hey, what was that ammo order again?" Kessler answers without smiling. The war moves on. Missions blur together, losses mount, victories fade into statistics, but among the men who sit behind those guns, the lesson remains. Survival isn't always about better armor, or more guns, or thicker wings. Sometimes it's about seeing the fight differently. Long after the mission is filed away, after the aircraft is repaired and sent back into the sky, one truth endures. They laughed at the idea, until the sky started filling with falling fighters. And in the cold math of air combat, that laughter never came back.